Hello, my name is Tom Line, and you've tuned into my YouTube channel, Civil War Corner. Tonight we're going to talk about buffaloes and George Pickett. George Pickett, well known for Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. And the buffaloes we're talking about tonight are not large bovines on the prairies, but actual human beings. Buffaloes were local Unionists engaged in guerrilla warfare and terrorist tactics during the Civil War, especially in eastern North Carolina. Similar to bushwhackers in the western part of the state, in portions of Appalachia, and on the war's western frontier, buffaloes consisted of Confederate deserters, draft resistors, escaped prisoners, and lawless white men and boys. They formed bands which were compared to herds of buffaloes, giving them their name, that hid out in swamps and forests, and often in league with fugitive slaves, gathered arms and raided local communities and plantations, harassing civilians and stealing or destroying their property and foodstuffs. Wingfield Plantation on the Chowan River north of Edenton became a fortified encampment that served as the base of buffalo operations and provided a refuge for deserters, fugitive slaves, and Union sympathizers throughout the northeastern corner of the state. Local Confederates assaulted it in a series of attacks in the winter of 1862-1863. By the third strike, although the fort itself was destroyed, most of the buffaloes had escaped by federal gunboat. Enter George Pickett. George Pickett, as we said, famous for Pickett's charge at Gettysburg, but one must remember that attack was neither planned by Pickett nor ordered by Pickett. He was very happy to participate as he was hungry for glory, but the failure of it was not necessarily his fault, as he frankly did nothing wrong. But it was a black mark on his record. After Gettysburg, Pickett was given command of the Department of North Carolina. It proved an impossible assignment. North Carolina had been a problem state for the Confederacy from the beginning of hostilities. Unlike its sister state to the immediate south, which was the first to sever ties with the Union, North Carolina was the second to last to secede. From the beginning, its citizens had manifested mixed loyalties, and it remained so throughout the war. In January of 1864, Robert E. Lee placed Pickett in charge of a major campaign. The coastal North Carolina town of New Bern had been under Union control since early 1862, with the Yankees well secured behind forts, blockhouses, and earthworks. Desperately in need of supplies, Lee determined that he could provision his army with the plentiful stores stockpiled in the town. George Pickett was given command of a combined land and sea expedition to recapture New Bern. Using the town of Kinston as a staging area, Pickett had some 13,000 men, the largest force he had personally ever commanded, southeast towards New Bern. Eventually, nearly every aspect of the complicated plan went horribly awry, and the attack proved to be disastrous. Pickett's attempt at redemption had resulted in yet another humiliating defeat, and although he tried desperately to shift responsibility onto his subordinates, this time the blame set squarely on his own shoulders. Over the next few weeks, as word of the New Bern debacle spread, both northern and southern newspapers pilloried the hapless general. Worse yet, President Jefferson Davis himself was painfully aware of Pickett's failure. Writing in frustration to Lee, General Pickett has returned from his expedition unsuccessful in the main object. So again, another black mark on Pickett's record. Those two happenings, both Pickett's charge and the North Carolina expedition, may or may not have affected what happened next. And frankly, one of the most horrific and terrible happenings in the Civil War. Farther down the coast, burning and pillaging by black and white guerrillas was sufficiently aggravating that Confederate Commander Pickett resorted to extreme measures. In February 1864, Pickett captured 22 deserters engaged in guerrilla activity, all of them dressed as Union soldiers. After a court-martial for desertion from the Confederate Army, Pickett marched the prisoners west to Kinston, where most of them had lived. There he ordered them hanged in front of their wives, children, and other family members, an action that put Pickett in the midst of yet another major military controversy. I know all of us who study the Civil War understand how terrible the Civil War was, but there are just certain things that happen that really drive that home. And in a very bloody 4 years and a very terrible 4 years, this probably is one of the worst happenings of the war. If you like what you've seen and heard, please click like and subscribe, and thank you very much for your time.